Welcome to our session, which is called How to Awaken Your Primordial Power and Your True Self. They are basically the same thing, as you're going to see. And we're going to reveal the most totally fulfilling experience that you can ever have, which is how to expand and extend your own consciousness and become part of life itself. Now, this might seem a very strange idea, but I'll explain it very, very thoroughly to you as we go through, and you'll see quite clearly that this is the secret key to everything to improve and uplift your life. It's a multi-layered idea, but it is something that you can put into practice in your life, and it's very, very important because, let's face it, you can ask yourself, would you really like to enjoy the best that life has to offer? Have you made that commitment, or perhaps something that surpasses everything else? Would you like that as well, particularly when it doesn't cost anything? Well, most people are on a search for happiness, but they find that the experience of ordinary happiness is usually prompted by something outside themselves. And so we've all been conditioned and trained in this consumer society to seek happiness out there in the world, usually in some material object or with someone else or a group of people or an adventure or whatever it is. And that's all great, because there's no question those things can make you happy. But what we're looking for here in this session is something that transcends ordinary happiness, that is not dependent on the outside world in any way, that's a result of something within you, which is really, as the ancient traditions have said, something far more stunning than ordinary happiness. It's so exquisite, it's so divine, it's so fulfilled with power and ecstasy that nothing can match it. It's totally fulfilling. But what is interesting is that not only do you recognize it immediately as your own essence, but you realize that you could be living your entire life from this state. And state is the key word, because your life is experienced through the state you are in. So you really want to get that state cracking properly in your life. And what does it mean really? Well, it's essentially an experience of an increased or expanded state of consciousness and full aliveness. And it's something that's deeply within you, that will be experienced through every cell in your body. So it's not a head trip of any time, of any type, I should say. And also what it is that not only does it pass through every cell of your body, but it also becomes the atmosphere that you have. And it's very interesting how that happens, because all of us carry an atmosphere of some type or another, and we all read each other's atmospheres. And it's the sense of who a person is, the sense of their presence, of the kind of qualities they are, and you can judge people, albeit subconsciously, by their atmosphere. So you're carrying one, I'm carrying one, everybody is carrying one, and if you really want to change the effect that you have on other people, you've got to brighten up your atmosphere. We'll go into this as we go through the session. So that's a very important thing to remember, that your own consciousness exists through every cell, every atom of your body, and it extends as well around you. So we'll have a look at how that works. It's very, very interesting. And when you're in a great state, the state of the primordial energy, in other words, it has a feeling of such depth, power, and joy that it surpasses anything the material world can offer you. So many people I know, I hear this all the time, people go through their lives, and a few weeks out from their death, they're lying there thinking, what was the point of all that? What did that mean? People who are hundreds of millions of dollars worth, or just ordinary people in an ordinary life, and they start to say things like that. What did it all mean? What was the point of it? Why did I do all those things that I did? Well, they didn't go for the real thing. So don't make that mistake. We're going to make sure that you don't make that mistake, because it is not the correct way to live. And obviously, if you asked anybody if they'd like to live in that such a state as that, everybody must say yes, because who wouldn't really want to taste the supreme experience of life? I mean, why go for second best? Why waste your time, your energy, your money, and everything else going for something that is not the full banana? You want the whole story. So let's now give you the full story of what it means to be a fully alive human being. And that's really what it means, to be fully alive in the sense of the energy of life. You're there like a sort of wild animal, electrified and excited and strong and all those kinds of things. So what you're going to hear in this session is crucially important for the improvement of every single area and aspect of your life, because nothing works better to uplift everything that you experience than this state of consciousness. So save yourself some decades. Don't think you're going to find fulfillment out there. Yes, you can enjoy things, have pleasure and ordinary happiness out there, but what you're looking for is something far, far deeper. And as we go through, this is going to give you a fundamentally new idea of what it is to be alive and what is your ultimate opportunity in life as well. So what does it mean to change your state? Because it's very, very confusing. People change their state when they drink or take drugs, but that's not what we're talking about here. What it means is, let's take a simple analogy. Let's say you go out into the garden and you look at your grassy lawn. There it is, all nicely trimmed perhaps, and you get out a hugely powerful magnifying glass and you hold it over the top of the grass, and if it's powerful enough, you'll see many tiny weeny insects and other life forms that you could not see before. The magnifying glass has revealed extra things to you that you'd never experienced. Now, and you can do that, of course, looking through a huge telescope into the starry night sky. So this is just a hint of what an altered state of consciousness does for you. It doesn't obviously magnify in that way, but it reveals and expands the depth of what you experience. And what you experience, as you know, if you've ever done that, becomes richer and more fascinating and more interesting. And even a drop of water magnified under a powerful glass looks much more interesting. You see little weeny things swimming in it and so on. And that's what life is, that we only see a very limited sliver of life. And that does not fulfill people, because what allows you to view life is your own energy system. And when that is contracted, your primordial energy is contracted, you can see in an ordinary way. And when you expand it into a higher state, out comes the magnifying glass in our analogy, and you see so much more detail, color, depth, all these kinds of things. So that's a simple analogy. Don't take it too far. It's just to help you understand that. Now, the state that we're talking about, this primordial energetic state that you can experience yourself at any time. Why? Because it's in there all the time throughout your life, quite obviously. They call that in some quarters the cosmic orgasm. Sounds good, doesn't it? It's the pulse and the throb of the primordial energy, because just like the Big Bang went bang, it was like a boom, a throb, a pulse of something like a electromagnetic wave or something, a boom, out like that. That's what you find everything is doing in life, throbbing or pulsing. They're coming boom, 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 all the time. Your heartbeat, boom, 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 similar sort of thing. So the original pulse and throb of life is what created this universe, what sustains it. We don't know what it is or where it came from, but we know that it does that. And when you start to awaken your consciousness to a deeper level, what you find is that the sliver of experience, a little tiny bit of that experience, nothing surpasses it that you've ever experienced before or will experience in the future of an ordinary level. That there is something that is so transformative when you realize, my goodness, I've got this primordial power within me, because you start to grow in it, that it's stunning and amazing. And when you feel it, it doesn't sort of go boom, boom, boom all the time. It's just like a kind of, I'm sort of trying to make it understandable for you. And the closest thing to it is a full body orgasm. You read about this in the sex books, you know, but it's something that is a full release, a letting go, that kind of thing. And though, I should say that Muktananda, the meditation master I studied under, who was in this state all the time, he was asked once in a satsang meeting kind of thing that the yogis do, and he was asked about the sexual orgasm. What was it all about? And this young man was interested in sexual orgasms. And Muktananda took off his glasses and he looked at him and he said, "You are chasing one orgasm. That's what you're doing. You see how many stars are in the night sky, the bright, bright stars, millions, trillions of stars." And he looked at the guy and he said, "That's how many orgasms I'm experiencing at every moment of my life." So, sounds great, doesn't it? It certainly inspired me when I was sitting there in that hall in Melbourne with him as he said it. And what it means is that there is something so incredibly different and better than the ordinary experiences the consumer society drives us all to chase, that it is beyond the comprehension of the ordinary person who hasn't heard about it or doesn't put in the time to do the practices. You have to put the time in to do the practices. They will pay off for you far better than anything else ever will. So what it means is that when you get to this state, or you awaken at least a sliver or a glimmer of this state, it's that not only is there an increase in the depth and details of your experience of life, but it is also accompanied by ecstasy. So you know you're on the right track. You suddenly feel that you're in this increased and expanded state, which is the aim of every true spiritual, religious, personal development, consciousness path, even though few know it exists. But for you, you become this powerful being where your consciousness expands, and then you are feeling full of joy, bliss, ecstasy. You are in a state of grace, which is what they call it in the West. In a state of grace. It's ecstatic. It's far better than a trillion orgasms, in other words. It's a permanent feeling of being one with everything. I'll go into what it is in a moment there now. So when you start to aim your life in this way and you commit yourself to these kinds of experiences, what you'll find is that nothing will improve your life more than that. Nothing will be as fulfilling, and nothing will integrate you with your essential nature at being in this state will do, just a sliver of it. And once you have one experience of it, it lasts you the rest of your life. It is that powerful and that profound. You never forget it. You know it's there. And of course, you want it more and more and more. So most people, you find, if you look into advertising, psychology, and things like that, you find that most people are feeling lost in some way. They've lost something. They don't know what it is, but they're feeling lost, and they're seeking it all the time through the objects of consumerism. And that's fine. That keeps us all going, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Unless you think that's all there is, then there's a problem. What it does is that it drives you, this sense of loss, to find satisfaction and fulfillment in the outside world, but unfortunately nothing out there can do it. And this is what keeps us all buying. But now you know, and other people know, of course, as well. What you have lost is your natural state, the state of living in and with your primordial energy. It's what you were prior to the influences of civilization. So if you live as a native in the jungles and have nothing to do with civilization, you still have this primordial power living through you. It's restricted, of course, because every group has its rules and regulations and, you know, conditioning processes, but it's not as bad if you're living in as a native state, yeah, as it is in the big cities, obviously. But don't misunderstand me. Don't run quickly up to the bush, as people do up here where I live, and turn themselves into natives. It doesn't work because the teeth start to hurt, and then they, you know, slip over and cut themselves. They've got to go to the hospital. They've got to go to the dentist, or, you know, the car breaks down and they can't get around. So there's no escaping consumerism. What you do is you handle it. You make sure that it is your subject, it is something that you are in control of, in other words. So don't reject it. That's another diverting path from what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is get into your natural state internally, okay? What you were prior to the influences of civilization. And interestingly enough, somewhere deep within your memory, you are totally familiar with it. You know it, and you know it as the most completely fulfilling experience that there is, even though it's below your level of consciousness. You've lost touch with it. It's still in there because it is the pulse that keeps you alive. So it's definitely still in there. If you're alive, it's there. But you crave it more than anything else. You know you've lost it somewhere in your being. Consciously, you don't think you've lost it. You think you've lost a nice lifestyle or one of the other consumer dreams. But what you've lost is connection to the primal. So you've lost connection to the fuel of your life. And it's, in fact, the lack of contact with this primordial energy and the most natural state that causes people to feel that either life is meaningless, they're going through life and it doesn't mean anything, and they might ask themselves, what's the point of it all? This is another thing that they go for. This is meaningless. I'm not excited about it. I'm flat. I might be depressed. I might be anxious. All those sorts of things. I'm unhappy. Everything's a bore. It's just a repeating of patterns. Blah, 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 that sort of thing. That's the what's the point of it all kind of idea. And you often see comedians, funnily enough, writing that out in their suicide notes or in their, you know, autobiographies or what have you, and many other people too. What's the point of it all? I'm here, I'm living, I've had some success, but what's the point? What's the point? What's the point? You will always feel what's the point of it all and flat and de-energized unless you're in touch with your natural state. So don't look out there for the solution. Look within, look within, look within. Go to the heart. Go within the system. Meditate, meditate, meditate. That's the secret to making sure that doesn't take you over. So what it means that unless your life is devoted to the awakening of and merging with the superconscious, then you really have no chance of fulfillment. You know, or the manifestation of more than a fraction of your powers, because the other side of the coin is that the primordial energy is that which creates the universe, and you use your primordial power to create your personal life. You are a junior god, if you like, whether you know it or not. You are creating your life through the mind. We've been through this in previous sessions about how all that works and how you manifest and that sort of thing. But that's the reality of it. So let's take it to the next level. You've got to the point, let's say, where you accept that you are the energy of life, because that's just logic. Do you know what I mean? It's like a drop saying it's not part of the ocean. It's silly, isn't it? So you are part of life. You are, life is energy, manifesting as matter. So are you. So you say, okay, well, that's who and what I am. Now, there's one experience above that acceptance and some experience of the energy through the whole body and an atmosphere around you and a state of consciousness where you're ecstatic. There is the other, the, you know, icing on the cake, if you like, and it is to directly experience yourself at a being which is one with the whole of life. So the drop becomes the ocean. That's the ultimate experience that you're looking for, that you want, whether you know it or not. When you have that experience of being at one with this thing called life, whether it's sitting at your desk, like we are all probably here, and or you're listening and watching to, or walking outside, or driving the car, or being in the shopping center, or being out in the bush, in the jungle, in the forest, and beautiful times like that, the sea, the ocean, all that. To be at one with what surrounds you, to directly experience it, is the highest experience there is, quite clearly. And this is called cosmic consciousness in the West, a very popular sort of hippie term, and enlightenment in the East. And it means to feel your own consciousness and your energy extend beyond your skin. So that sense of being me, which is in your body and perhaps your hands, your head and your hands most prominently, you feel that some sort of energy extension, an inflating balloon of energy, if you like, goes into the world around you, merging eventually, if you go for the highest experiences that come to you, and they come by surrender, opening to them, in other words, what you do is you find that you merge into one single unbroken field with you at its center and the whole universe as your body. Now, this is what cosmic consciousness is. You can look it up and read about it, or enlightenment, you can read about it. A lot of people call enlightenment a variety of things that are silly. That's enlightenment, what we're talking about here, that ability to embrace the universe and then bring yourself back to individuality. That's the skill that's worth developing, quite obviously. Now, if you think about that for a moment, a lot of people do think about it, but let's just say we think about it here now. If you can experience yourself as not only being one with the universe, but actually being the universe, because that is the logical extension of that, you experience yourself as the whole thing in expanded states of consciousness, what could possibly be beyond you in the sense of what you could create in your own life? See that? Think about that. If you can have even one single experience of that, you know that the consciousness that you are, extends all around you in all directions. And if it extends and has consciousness of all the other things that are around you, obviously there must be something within you that can influence those other objects and people and things of nature, etc., in some way or other that surround you. It's just logic. If you've experienced that now, you can find countless experiences in all the different traditions, all different countries, from the most eminent psychiatrists and great spiritual leaders and the ordinary Joe in the street, the musicians, all types of people. I'll give you a list in a second that experience and have this experience. It's called transpersonal psychology. Those experiences are under that in the mainstream psychology. So it exists. It's just that it's not in the mainstream papers. They're not interested in putting that out there. So what is your consciousness? Your consciousness is what you would call your sense of presence. Right now, you are in your consciousness. You are experiencing what you're hearing and seeing that we're presenting here in your consciousness. It's happening within your own consciousness. And if I snap my fingers like that, that was happening within your consciousness, even though it was me sitting somewhere else. To you in Brazil or wherever it might be, it's happened. It's happened within your consciousness. So it's not that you have to sort of try and find out what consciousness is. You're present with it all day, every day. Now, many people don't realize that it's this sense of presence, of being aware that you're alive and living on planet Earth. That's what it is. And the deeper and the richer you can make your consciousness through proper spiritual practices, which have been known for thousands of years, as you strengthen it and thicken its power, then what you find is that you start to truly live in the now or be present in the moment. Now, many people say you should try and live in the now in order to do that, but that's the wrong way round. And also living in the now is usually an aspect of a subpersonality called the witnessing mind. They're still stuck in the personal mind when they're trying to be in the now. It's a good thing they do. They're genuinely interested, but it is something primordial that you have to get in touch with if you truly want to live and be in the now. So what is normal is that we have our sense of self concentrated in the head and the face. That's where we see these two, the most obvious expressions of our personalities, the head and the face, the expressions we make in the mirror, brushing our hair, whatever it is. That's where we identify ourselves. We think we are that little tiny weeny bit of personality, that droplet of personality that is behind the head and the face and the eyes, looking in the mirror, and we sense of ourselves as we go through our daily life. Now, the reason that that is where the majority of people remain throughout their lives is because they don't know that they could expand their consciousness within the body. Just start with the body, that they could push their awareness through the whole body. And this is what yoga does for you and any of the other proper, ancient, proven, traditional disciplines. A lot of them don't work, but we know yoga works. So you find that if you can extend from the head and the face your energy and awareness through the body until you occupy the whole body, that you can sense your knees and your calves and your feet and your back, your chest and the hands and everything, just like you experience the face, then you will be extending your consciousness internally. That is just the beginning, I might add, but it's the next step on for you from where you are now. And when you meditate properly, and I emphasize properly, when you meditate properly, you'll find that the primordial energy will wake up and start to do the job on you, for you. Okay? Consciousness itself is a truly amazing thing. You think about it for a moment. Here is this consciousness that is aware, that it can perceive everything through the five senses and in other ways, extrasensory perceptions. And yet, what is it? Where is it? Does it exist? They think it's the brain. Some scientists, others dismiss that. Nobody knows what it is. And yet it exists. And yet it embraces the universe. And it is within you. And you are it. So spend your time on this extraordinary substance. If it is a substance, it's something invisible. We can't actually know what it is. But I can tell you this, when I was young, my mother was a psychic artist and healer, and she'd take me along to all sorts of things. And there were people that we met at the School of Psychic Studies that could read with their fingertips. You'd give them a piece of paper, you'd bring it yourself, bring it along. They would close their eyes, wouldn't look at it. Sometimes they'd cover it with a cloth even. And they'd run their fingers along the paper, the lines on the paper, quickly, not so they could feel the imprint of the ink or anything, just so zzz, like that. Zzz, zzz. And they could read, and they would speak out what they were reading. Now, how the earth do you work that out? What's going on there? They've got consciousness in their fingertips. Now, this is not so extraordinary when you think about it. What I found is that when I started meditating, and I was in Bondi, and I'd built a little meditation room. I was living there near the beach, and I was meditating up to 3 hours a day. And I'd sit there meditating, and sometimes in this special, completely dark room, I could see when my eyelids were closed. I could see the room, not from a memory point of view, but I could see a candle in a little red vase flickering. Or I could see where the blankets were folded up in the corner, things like this. And this is a very, very common experience for meditators. Consciousness sees. The eyes see, but consciousness also sees, because consciousness is the prior faculty from which all these things grow and come out in your life. Now, this is something so profound, as you'll see as we go through, because if you really want extraordinary things, that's where you must begin. You must now start with your consciousness. What is this? And the consciousness is closely aligned with attention. So you pay attention to attention. It might sound a bit funny. Attention is invisible. How do you pay attention to something that's invisible? You must. You will get it. It's just a little knack. and you do it by bringing yourself back. All the proper ancient traditional spiritual practices, the meditation, the chanting, the consciousness work, all those things are designed to help you do that automatically. That's why I spent a long time in the ashrams full time getting the experience of these things, because when you go to a place where the chanting and the meditating is done, then you find it affects you. Literally, it's some sort of glorious infection of Shakti, of energy, of grace that comes in and does these things to you. So instead of you trying to do it like you build muscles with lifting weights, it does you. And that's the advantage of meditating regularly. So consciousness is the first key, and that will give you, as you do it, profound experiences, including the expansion of consciousness, because consciousness is not divided up into little bits. It is one single sheet, one single field, one single ocean, and you learn to merge with that. At the moment you're contracted into a little bit, you learn to merge with that. So that's very, very important indeed. And how have you begun? Well, just try this little exercise when you get the chance. Imagine yourself as an energetic field of consciousness, a little blob of consciousness and intelligence, let's say. And you're floating around, softly pulsating away like a sphere of some sort of energy, you know, a ball or something like that. And one day you find yourself inside a tiny human baby's body. This is what's happened to you. Consciousness is occupying the body. And what you do, you find yourself maybe in the center of the body, you extend that consciousness into the arms, into the legs of this tiny baby, and into every cell of it. And as you sit there within this body, this is an analogy for you, as you sit there, the baby's body then starts to grow in a normal way. And as it grows, you go through the experience of being a growing baby and experiencing the process of conditioning that the baby infant goes through. And as time goes on, you would identify yourself as the body, as the growing child, and its conditioning would come into your memory banks, and you would lose touch with the fact that you are a field of energy primarily. And what you would find is that you are now in and being impressed by the influences that come into that baby's life. You would identify yourself with the baby's body, the baby's mind and memories. In other words, they become yourself or your identity. And then what happens is that your self-expression, which is the key to freedom, that becomes restricted by these forces and people, lack of encouragement in your outside world, all sorts of things start to repress you, and you become trapped by the conditioning. And it is this entrapment that causes you to forget that you are the original energetic field of consciousness. So now you know what it is that is blocking you. It is just the sense of entrapment that's come from all those events. And most people stay with that all their life. They become more and more compressed with the energy, and the whole thing is held in place by the stories that run through your mind. And these stories, or narrative identities as they're called in psychology now, they call the ego the narrative identities, they go on like audio tapes, audio tracks, let's say, over and over and over again. This is called your personality. Over and over and over again, they tell you who you are, what is available. You follow the stories that are there, and they become completely entwined with the restricted energy. So this is what's happened for you, and what you need to do, and this might be quite a stretch for a lot of people. A lot of people just can't grasp this. They don't like the concept of being an energetic being primarily. But when you do the practices, what you find is that you reawaken this knowledge. And I've had so many people that I've met in the years gone by that say, oh, I heard this stuff 5, 10, 20 years ago. I didn't believe it then. Now I've had an experience that proves it. I feel such a fool. I should never have done it. I should have stuck to it. Yes, is the answer. You should have stuck to it because it's not like some fantasy delusion, a new age fantasy. This is, hard quantum physics and biology and spiritual knowledge and all those kinds of things have their legs or their feet in this ground. Okay? What you want is an experience. If you ask for experience, if you go to your superconscious, the highest part of your mind, you ask for the experience, you will receive it. You will get it. You ask by your actions. I asked by going to the ashrams in India, sitting at the feet of the master, that physical thing. I didn't really know what I was looking for in those days, in the early days, but I went. I knew there was something, and I went and I sat there. The superconscious heard my request. I wasn't saying, please give me a sense of cosmic consciousness. It heard my request through my actions. And this is the most chilling thing of all, is that the superconscious responds to the slightest sliver. It is so sensitive to picking up your requests that it will come to the slightest sliver and give you it. It doesn't judge you. It reads you. And it gives you things that are absolutely shocking in their precision and accuracy. So I got those experiences because I wanted it. And I didn't just say, I want it. I started to take the actions. And that's a great secret. If you want anything, start to take the actions to show that you are serious. And what happens is that you have this energetic experience where you find everything is an extension of your own being. Now, why is this important? Because your life experiences are also an extension of your own being. Think about that. Your relationships, your job, your money, your creative powers, all your behaviors, your ability to communicate, to attract what you want into your life, the law of attraction idea, in other words. All these things are an extension of your being. It starts here with your personal consciousness, and then, albeit out of your personal consciousness awareness, but out goes your life. You are a life projector. You project things into life. Now, there are still accidents, there's still mistakes, there's still things that you can't have any power over, like earthquakes and what have you, but you do project those things, obviously through choice. You can see that. And you've got to take a sort of stand at one point in your life and go, okay, why are these things happening to me? Why am I doing it? I'm not attracting them into my life. I'm projecting them into my life. It's a different thing. You see the difference? You're a film projector projecting onto the cinema screen of your life. So it is quite possible for you to take command and control of that. And it's important that you realize that what you're experiencing has at least some of its origins within you. Once you get involved with other people and things like that, things can change. But that's what's happened for you. Now, let's have a look and see how this works on a practical level so you can see the truth of it and you can create experiences that will give you this truth. Because if you get this truth, I've given you an intellectual understanding of it. If you do the practices enough and you get the truth of this, your life will radically transform. You'll have the keys to an extraordinary life. So let's look at some real life examples. Now, what happens is, let's say, with a musician or someone like that. So if you're someone who concentrates on a particular skill with a greater level of concentration than other people, and most people can't concentrate very well at all, you can find that you may experience the extension not only of your consciousness but also of your sensations, because concentration, consciousness of, centration, the center. Concentration is the center of your being. What is the center of your being? It is your primordial energy and power. See how it works? So by concentrating on what you're doing, you can begin the process of extension of your awareness and consciousness into whatever it is that you're doing. So the musician literally can become his or her music. They can feel the energy move into their hands and into the instrument itself. You read about them. You find they talk about this. They feel the energy pouring through them. They feel they're the piano keys or the guitar or whatever it is. They experience it. They literally become their music. Their music is literally an extension of them. And this is rare, but certainly not unusual at all. And that sense of self, which is normally pinned in the face, has been expressed into and through the instrument itself. Just like the person who could read text with their hands, with their fingertips, their eyes closed, in the same way, the musician's consciousness moves through their fingertips and into the instrument itself. So they lose their sense of limited ordinary self and become one, totally one with all aspects of the music. There's no difference, no separation between the instrument and the person playing it. It's all one seamless whole. This is called the transpersonal experience, that which transcends the personal or is above the personal, in other words, transpersonal, that real musicians look for. They really want it. Take a sports person. They can find their consciousness becomes involved with the physical implements of the sport. For instance, with golf. A true champion can feel themselves right into the club. You look how they concentrate. They are sending their awareness right through the club. They're trying to, at least. And a few even report becoming, in inverted commas, the ball and feeling as it flies through the air, bizarre as it might seem, that they have some sort of connection to it. You read about Jack Nicklaus and all the great golfers. They talk about that. There's a book called Golf in the Kingdom, written by Michael Murphy, which is very interesting about that kind of thing. Same with a brilliant footballer. The ball seems to obey them in some way as if it's part of them, that literally it becomes an extension of them. And that's what people mean when they say magic happens, these kinds of things. Top racing car drivers, exactly the same thing. They report that they become one with the car, that their consciousness seems to be able to influence the way that it's driven, that they extend themselves, their beingness, into the tires, the engine, as they race along the road at high speed, at death-defying speeds. They crack open some resistance and they become one with the whole thing. And the exhilaration they feel when you talk to them about it, or you read their, after they retire, they talk about it. They don't talk about it much. It surpasses anything that ordinary life offers. And that's a transformative experience for them, well known with artists as well. They can send themselves into the brushes, into the paint, into the canvas. It's all one integrated field of consciousness, which is why the great artists talk about consciousness. And that's exactly what it is, of course. Animal trainers, people with their pets, they can feel a deep psychic connection with them and can communicate with them quite profoundly. And in the shamanic traditions in the ancient world, you've also found that they cultivate this animalistic connection to the point where the initiates can actually feel themselves as the animal or as the bird flying along. They become one with it. This is the training of the shamans. Read into the shamanic literature. It's very, very interesting. Michael Harner is a great professor of that kind of thing. And you look on a simple level, gardeners with their green thumb, they call it a green thumb. Somehow or other, they can connect with the plants, with the vegetables, with the flowers, whatever it is. They don't talk about it because it'd be ridiculed. And people just say, oh, you got a green thumb. But the plants respond. There's been many, many experiments on that kind of thing. A fisherman in the stream, same thing. He knows where the fish are swimming, can throw his hook and flick his rod accordingly, and he can sense and become conscious at some deeper level where the fish are biting. Well known. I experienced my consciousness expanded beyond the body 100 or 200 meters in all directions. I felt myself become one with anything. I know this is true. I've done this a number of times. And it was a blissful and ecstatic experience. Jim Carrey, the actor, tells of having the same thing and how he very much wants it again and again. I've experienced with friends, 2 actors in the Australian theatre, who in Melbourne actually, who experienced an expanded state of consciousness performing on stage. They gave the best performances of their careers. People who were on the stage with them, actors, couldn't believe how well they were performing and doing their actual work. Now, of course, this is the West. In the East, they've made a formal study of extension of consciousness for centuries, and they call this the true yoga. So why have you lost touch with it? Simply because it's an unused muscle that you have not woken up, and you need to wake it up. There are many things restricting you, no doubt about that. What they are is the subpersonalities, the limitations of conditioning, the memories, the DNA, the fear, survival, your upbringing, the primordial power itself only can free you from all those restrictions. That's why you need to develop a relationship with it. And why and how can you do that? Well, you do that because you want to be free. And how you do that is you go to where the primordial energy is, at source within your being. You turn within, you follow the advice, know thyself. Go within, find out who and what you are at the deepest level of your being. And when you do this, you find that it'll allow you to build a new structure in your mind that can accept it's possible. You need to hear about it intellectually, in other words. If you hear about it intellectually, if you study it, it's 100 times easier. Otherwise, the negative subpersonalities will drop, you back into the old identity with the false personality. And it's absolutely necessary. You follow those energy practices and exercises, they're great. But the real secret of success, and make a note of this one, is freeing yourself from the narrative streams, the stories, in your mind that contradict your possibility of becoming a more conscious being. That's your big block. It's the stories you're listening to, the stories that tell you you are not it, the stories that instruct you to live a constricted, restrictive life, to not be an inclusive person, play all sorts of psychobabble games, emotional, attachments and neuroses and all that kind of thing. It's these which anchor and grip your awareness into a lesser, reduced level of consciousness. If you're a person who holds themselves in the subconscious even, rather than somebody who expresses themselves out, you'll never be able to experience your primordial energy. Why? Because you're keeping the cork on the bottle. That's what you're doing. So you need continual and constant reminders that you actually are this primordial energy, which is the superconscious power, and you must have the deliberate intention to build within your mind the knowledge of this subject, even to start with, and then do the internal exercises to awaken the grace, to awaken the Shakti, and so on. So it is completely easy to do, and when you do it and you get a glimpse of it, what you find is that it's as if you'd sat down all your life and never used your legs, and one day somebody says, hey, you've got a pair of legs, why don't you use them? And you get up and you start to walk. It's that profound a difference. What a different life you'd be leading if that happened to you. So what you're trying to do is to discover an extraordinary new capability or capacity. And it's something you will find in your life just by filling your mind up with it, by studying it, in other words, by practicing the techniques that you need, the consciousness techniques, which we've had in many, many, many of these webinars and courses that you've got from me. These are the experiences that you need, because it is your intention, most of all, that will bring you to the ability to activate higher states. So here's the steps. First is the decision. You make the decision that you need to aim for an ever-deepening connection with the primordial energy. You already are it. It's not something you've got to find. You're just having a little bit of it. It's like an electric heater that's turned down low. You can feel a little bit of warmth coming out of it. You've got to turn it up so you can feel a lot more warmth coming from it. And you accept that you and the energy field of the primordial energy are the same thing, therefore, and you, by concentrating on it, you'll find that that energy will start to build in you. And it's the animating force, we call the primordial energy the animating force as well. And your main work is to reconnect with it. And how do you do that? The journey is from contraction to expansion. You decontract. And probably the best way for thousands of years, if not longer, has been through chanting. And why is that? Because the spinal cord, your brain is a three-layered device. The spinal cord, here's the head on the top, the nervous system, in other words. The spinal cord is where the strongest resistances are held and stored from your upbringing. Because if ever you've been frightened, this is where the fight, flight, and freeze response is. It gets stored in there. And how many times has a child been frightened? Quite a lot. How many times they wake up from a nightmare? Quite a lot. Bullied, all those sorts of things. So in your spinal cord and the brain, obviously, there is the core reason. This is why you find in the yogic scriptures and all the traditions of every country, the mystical traditions, they're always talking about freeing up the spinal cord, the kundalini arising, this kind of thing. And why do they want to do that? Because that's where the primordial energies can be free. And if you can free up the spinal cord, and you notice how yoga is full of stretching the spine, the exercises, and so on, and the chanting is what will vibrate the old patterns out of your spinal cord. Not only will it do that, but it will help you declutter the mind of the old identifications of who and what you think you are or used to be. Because once you taste the freedom of your mammal, your animal nature, once you taste that freedom, nothing matches it. You don't turn into a savage beast under any circumstances. What you become is a fully alive being. You feel so strong, so fabulous. It's the great rejuvenation technique. If you feel the clock's ticking on, don't take a few pills and potions. They might help. Just get the old spine in order. You are as old as your spine, is a saying in the medical profession that I've heard. So you do that through the chanting, the meditating, consciousness work, the practices where you move, whether it's a sort of Tai Chi movement or a martial art or some yogic practices. That's what you do. You must get the spine limber. It'll help you health-wise in a tremendous way. You make sure you go to the right teacher perhaps, but that is a very, very good thing to do. And you learn how to balance your consciousness. In other words, you bring it into harmony. You do things fully. You don't sit there, you know, talking about this, that, and the other and never concentrating. Sometimes you can do that, but you want to, when you're cooking the dinner, concentrate fully on what you're doing. Have that sense of full concentration. Eventually you'll be able to have a conversation as well as sense that, because your sensing ability will grow. And then what you also do, remember these ancient techniques have been proven over the centuries, probably thousands of years. Then what you do is you bring consciousness into your everyday life. As we've discussed previously, you bring your full consciousness into the whole body first of all, and then into the activities that you do. And then the superconscious will start to wake up. Superconscious is powered by the primordial energy. They're two sides of the same coin. And what you find is that you have an obedient and brilliant assistant who showers you with marvelous ideas and solutions. A lot of people don't understand this, and it's very important that you do, that you realize that you have a genius with you at all times who will respond to you and give you what it is that you want. You have to take the actions, you have to do your bit, you have to behave in the right ways, but somehow or other the magic of coincidences starts to come in and take place. So the more primordial power you have access to, the greater your happiness as well as love. You have that strength, that wild energy, wild free energy that gives you the happiness. And things that seem to irritate you in the past or drag you down and make you feel unhappy or anxious or whatever it is, have no power to shift you from a happy state. And having this attitude and method available for your money life, you'll find that tuning in with your primordial power will give you a much clearer insight into the money game. Everything is fine in consciousness. It all comes from consciousness. There's nothing right or wrong about anything in the sense of being able to take advantage of the money world to get what you want. So what you need to do is to increase the power. The power of the primordial energy will shift and dislodge from your mind all the different things that are blocking you, of which there are many, inevitably many. So it is the life principle. It will do it for you. So you merge with your superconscious as much as you can with your internal practices. And then the second thing you do is you use your everyday life experiences as the means to awaken from the restrictions of the past. There's lots of other things that you can do, but you must turn within. You must do those things that I've mentioned, because meditation activates a mysterious electro-alchemical force that transforms you when you meditate regularly. If you meditate regularly, you've got the golden key. If you don't, you'll stay as you are, because there'll be no way that you can shift and change things, obviously. So it flushes out, this electro-alchemical force, flushes out all negativity. It goes. And secondly, it starts to bring extraordinary coincidences and rewards in the world of your experience. And thirdly, it puts you in a permanently altered state of consciousness with its resulting feelings of power, strength, bliss, and energy. And it does this by arousing the dormant microcosmic forces that are stored in the pelvic region, your pelvic region, sometimes referred to as bioenergy, or in the East, Kundalini energy, which is coiled energy, and you uncoil that energy and bring it back into your life. Even a tiny bit brings to you tremendous benefits in your material world, relationship, lifestyle, wealth, extrasensory perceptions, personal magnetism, success, and so on. But unfortunately, people stop paying attention to it. It's a real shame. They shouldn't do it. It's a continuum of power. Form a relationship with it, and you will enjoy things that you never even dreamed possible that you could do. So that's my advice to you. It's not something that is out of your reach. It's completely within your reach. If you apply it, any technique applied with this knowledge that you are already it, you are already the superconscious, you are already the primordial power, if you do that, then what you'll find is that results will come. That's the strange thing. And the best benefit of all is that if you do this work with this knowledge and you learn all the things that we have to teach you here, you will automatically become a manifester. You'll be able to manifest what it is that you want into your life.